Good evening, candidates and audience members. Thank you for attending the League of Women Voters of Santa Fe County's Candidate Forum for District Attorney, 1st Judicial District. I'm Hannah Burling, and I will be the moderator. On behalf of the League, I want to express our gratitude to the Santa Fe New Mexican for broadcasting our candidate forums this year as a service to the community. And right now, I'd like to introduce Patrick Dorsey, the publisher, who has a few words for us.
Only about a half hour, don't worry about it. No, I know we want to get quickly to the debates. I just wanted to, on behalf of the Santa Fe New Mexican, thank you all for coming out tonight. We're proud to broadcast this debate and many that the League of Women Voters do. Thank you for all that you do to encourage civil discourse and civic engagement that you all do. So it's a big deal, and we thank you very much. So in our 175th year, the Santa Fe New Mexican, I don't know that we did debates like this for 175 years, but it's been close. But thank you very much, and I appreciate everyone showing up tonight.
Thank you. Okay. The League is committed to civil discourse. The candidates have agreed to follow League protocols for candidate forums, including respecting the time limits for their responses, not engaging in crosstalk, and being mutually respectful, courteous, constructive, and orderly, even when they disagree. The questions we ask will be selected by our screening panel to focus on the issues that seem to generate the most interest. Questions that are similar will be consolidated, and questions that are directed to one candidate or contain a personal attack will be eliminated. Due to time constraints, not all questions can be asked. We invite you to stay after the forum and talk to the candidates. If you haven't already submitted your questions, you can email them to lwvsfc@gmail.com now or at any time during the forum. For those of you who are attending in person, write your questions on the 3x5 note cards that are being distributed. Submit one question per note card, and please write legibly. Hold the card up when finished so our runners can pick it up. Our timekeeper, Mary Shrubin, is sitting in the front. When you have 15 or 30 seconds left, depending on minutes assigned to the question, actually, is it just 30 seconds? Yes, just 30 seconds. She will hold up a yellow warning sign, and when your time is up, she will hold up the red stop sign. At that point, we ask that you wind up your response immediately. If not, I will interrupt out of fairness to everyone. In the interest of time, please save your applause until the end of the forum. Before I introduce the candidates, I want to review the responsibilities of the District Attorney, 1st Judicial District. Okay. 1st Judicial District of New Mexico includes Los Alamos, Rio Arriba, and Santa Fe counties, and prosecutes criminal offenses within these counties. The district attorney handles civil suits involving real estate or claims over $10,000, juvenile cases, divorce and child custody, criminal felony cases, and appeals from lower courts. We will begin with a 2-minute opening statement by the candidates and conclude with 1-minute closing statements. First, we will hear from candidate Mary Carmack Altwies.
I want to begin by saying thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this evening, and I want to thank everyone for being here tonight and participating in this. I am Mary Carmack Altwies, and I am so proud to be your currently serving district attorney. It has been an honor to serve the people of the 1st Judicial District and to turn this office around so that it is something that our community can be proud of. When I took office in 2021, the DA's office was struggling. The prior administration had left behind homicide and officer-involved shooting backlogs. Diversion programs were at a standstill, and office morale was low. I'd like to tell you a story, though, about how the office has changed under my administration. In February of 2022, I argued a first-degree murder trial in Santa Fe. That trial was 3 weeks long and involved the participation of no fewer than 8 members of my office. We got a conviction within 2 hours on first-degree murder. And while it will never bring back the victim, the family has expressed renewed faith in our system. Now, that conviction only came about because I reorganized our office to offer full support for any and every attorney going into trial, and because we had the full participation of the Santa Fe Police Department. That's an example of how I have raised our violent crime conviction rate to 95% during my administration. I've also drastically improved morale by reorganizing the office to address inefficiencies and ensuring that support staff and my attorneys are paid a livable wage. We have successfully cleared the homicide and officer-involved shooting backlogs, guaranteeing that officer-involved shootings are now reviewed personally by me within 45 days. We are holding violent offenders accountable, such as our policy of taking gun crimes and aggravating fleeing cases seriously by filing to hold those people in jail who discharge firearms or flee law enforcement. Tonight, I'm looking forward to talking more about my office and my vision for the next 4 years. Thank you.
And we'll now hear from Mr. Cerna.
Thank you, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you to the league, and thank you for Mary for this this process. My name is Marco Cerna. I am running for district attorney, and a top priority for me as district attorney will be to address homelessness, mental illness, and how that correlates with crime here in northern New Mexico. So how do we do that? First, we need community-based solutions so that we are addressing these as a community. All the front runners for this issue need to come together so that we're all together engaging this issue in an effective manner. Second, mental health and crisis intervention training. We need to ensure that our officers, our first responders, and anybody else who comes into contact with this community can do it compassionately and effectively as well. Third, supportive housing and treatment programs. We know that if somebody has a place to live, if they have services available to them at all times, we know that not only will they not, it'll diminish the event of them committing a crime, but it will also help with recidivism rates. We also need diversion courts and early intervention, and we need to address substance abuse head-on with more resources. I pledge to you, as district attorney, first and foremost, to eliminate the current DWI policy, which in my humble opinion has created a public safety issue. Second, I will never appoint 4 special prosecutors, 1 PR firm, and a disbarred attorney turned into paralegal to address 1 case because of 1 individual's high-profile status. And third, I pledge transparency to all. I pledge especially that nobody's First Amendment rights will be hindered while I am at the helm. I appreciate you all again. I ask for your support, and thank you.
Thank you. This first question is a 2-minute question, and we will start with Ms. Carmack-Altwies. What are the 3 most pressing issues facing the DA right now?
The 3 most pressing issues facing the DA right now, I would say, are gun crimes, other violent crimes, and working on diversion programs. Much of what Mr. Cerna just said, I would agree with. We need more resources for substance abuse, mental health, and supportive housing. However, that's not exactly what the role of the district attorney. Our role is to keep our community safer by prosecuting smarter and prosecuting harder and putting violent criminals away. Gun crimes are a huge scourge in our entire community. We are addressing that head-on by filing motions to keep people in jail when they commit a crime with guns. We are also addressing that head-on by seeking by seeking convictions and getting those people removed from our community. But a second problem is that we do have a plethora of cases that come in front of us that are lower level nonviolent offenders, and we need more resources to deal with those people, to send them to rehab, to get them treatment, to get them counseling. And to that end, I have been lobbying the governor for the last 2 years to put more resources into mental health and substance abuse treatment programs. That is the only way that we are ever going to get a hold on the fentanyl problem, on our homelessness problem, and on a lot of these petty low-level crimes. And I would say the third issue is that the district attorney's office continues to need resources so that we have the appropriate amount of people, the appropriate amount of personnel in our office to ensure that we get those convictions.
Thank you. Mr. Cerna?
Thank you. Great question. I think we all agree, just in state government in general, that resources are slim at best, especially when it comes to the criminal justice issue. So resources, first and foremost, are always a problem in any government agency, in my opinion. But when it comes to specifically to the district attorney's office currently, I again believe that the DWI issue is an issue, at least for me, in my opinion, currently how the policy is run. I believe that all DWIs that have adequate evidence should be addressed, they should be prosecuted, and they should be prosecuted effectively. Number two, I think that there are issues right now with the current office with regard to handling of funds. Just to give you guys an idea, the current or the yearly budget for the district attorney's office is around $8.2 million. We see in this current case that we're approaching $1 million with another special prosecutor hired to address the Rust case. And in my opinion, this is mismanagement of funds that could be utilized not only to keep attorneys, to attract other staff, but also that money could be better used to address other issues such as addiction, intervention, and special courts. And third, transparency, again, I believe is an issue with this particular office as currently with the district attorney's office. I believe that if somebody's First Amendment rights by the one office that is supposed to hold people accountable, if that office is infringing on those rights, that's an issue. If that office isn't providing information to media and other requests, that's an issue. So I believe those are the top three issues currently with the district attorney's office. Thank you.
Thank you. This question has 1 minute for answering, and we'll start with Mr. Cerna. In your experience as first judicial DA, what are you most proud of?
I believe I am most proud of the intake process that I had helped facilitate and grow when I was in office. I believe that we were able to address issues with regard to discovery with our partners in law enforcement, to effectively communicate when there were disagreements, and to address issues together that came to the office and to all offices, excuse me, and to any problem that we had with a specific case. We're all in this together in the criminal justice system, and I believe that that relationship, not only with our intake but with our fellow partners in the criminal justice system, I believe that we created a great relationship and did a lot of good.
Thank you. Ms. Carmack-Albright.
Thank you. The thing that I am the most proud of is that I have put together the strongest staff in the entire state. I am a boots-on-the-ground leadership oriented district attorney. I am there every single day providing training and leadership to my attorneys and to my staff. And to that end, we are seeing the results of that every single day. And it's interesting that Mr. Cerna brought up the DWI conviction rate. We released stats this week. We are at an 87% conviction rate in this jurisdiction for DWIs. I am so proud of that, and I am so proud of our 95% conviction rate for violent crimes. And all of that has to do with the fact that I have provided my staff with support that they need in order to go into court and be able to win trials and lawyer. And I am proud that I am there every day in the trenches fighting with them.
Thank you. And this is a 2-minute question. And we'll begin with Ms. Carmack-Albright. What steps will you take to prevent child abuse?
Well, child abuse, as everyone knows, is a huge problem in this state. It is a statewide issue. I am proud to say that we have one of the best subject matter attorneys in the entire state that prosecutes our child abuse cases. And she works every single day with our law enforcement agencies around the jurisdiction to make sure that those cases are investigated properly, and that then she has the resources to bring those cases to trial and to win those cases. As an example, I'm going to have to talk about terrible, ugly things, but just recently she has taken a case to trial that involved the death of a baby. And it was a case that languished in the prior administration for about 4 years. She came into office, she started dealing with that case, she got it to trial, and she won. And he is now serving a life imprisonment. That is the kind of thing that we are bringing to the office every single day. And that's one of the ways that we deal with child abuse, is by having the right people in place that can go through and get those convictions and take child abusers out of our system, out of our community.
Mr. Cerna.
Thank you. That's a great question. First and foremost, we have to work with our partners at CYFD. These people are at the front lines of making sure that our children are safe, investigating any leads that come across their desk, but they also need more resources. So I would dedicate my time at the legislature to help them get more funding so that they can get those people into the homes, investigating properly, ensuring that our children are safe. Second, we always need to meet with our law enforcement on these cases to ensure that any child abuse case that comes across our desk is effectively prosecuted and nothing falls through the cracks. We have to ensure that. Third, we have to get into our schools. We have to educate. We not only have to educate the children, but the teachers to look out for the signs and symptoms of child abuse, which can be subtle at times. And lastly, we need to ensure that any case that involves a crime against a child is prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, that we protect those most vulnerable. And I'm going to bring up a case that was extremely difficult for me to handle in my tenure, was the Jeremiah case with the poor child who we found 3 months later, but who was in a cage for majority of the end of his life, beaten, tortured. There's some things you don't see as a prosecutor, and some things you wish you could forget, but you can't. We successfully prosecuted that case, and I just pray that he's in a better place right now.
Thank you. This question has a 1-minute time limit. We'll start with Mr. Cerna. What steps would you take to prevent elder abuse?
So fortunately, I actually had the opportunity to work with the Attorney General's office in the Medicaid Fraud and Elder Abuse Division. So I actually have been at the front line of elder abuse. And again, this comes down to training. It comes down to education, but also family members, when they see anything, anything that even is a hint of abuse, they need to report it. Because a lot of times we have individuals, this goes for child abuse as well, ladies and gentlemen, but a lot of times we have individuals who see these minor little evidentiary points that they think, oh, it could be a slip and fall, or somebody's complaining, they must be delirious, or whatever the case may be. But we need to ensure that they're educated, that our people are educated so that they make the proper assessment, and that they address those issues as best as they can, so that we can see and investigate as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Carmichael-Altemus?
Yes. With regard to the, sorry. With regard to the last question, Mr. Cerna brought up the Jeremiah case, and I agree. I prosecuted that case, and we did successfully prosecute it, and I'm very proud of that. With regard to elder abuse, one of the things that we need to do is work with the ALTSD, the Long-Term Services Division, Elderly and Long-Term Services Division, and we need to be in constant contact contact with them when they are sending their investigators into nursing homes, into homes where there's home health care being given. And when we are in contact with them, that often means that they have started an investigation. They then turn it over to our office. I have a really wonderful investigator staff, and that is what they are there for, is to get these complaints in and start to review them to see if there is something criminal. And so we are, every day when we hear about those, we would start to investigate. So you need to have people in your office that are strong, that know what they're doing, and that are willing to go the extra mile to put these cases together.
Thank you. This is a 1-minute question. How will you defend Santa Fe's historic treasures? And we'll start with Ms. Carmack-Alquist.
I think this case, or this question, has to do with the obelisk case, and I want to make very clear what happened to the obelisk was a crime, it was a tragedy, and it tore our community apart. And I did not take lightly my obligations to see that those 8 people were brought to justice. That said, no person was hurt that day. And I had pledged to divert people that committed non-violent offenses into diversion programs. And that is what I did. They faced accountability, they faced consequences. They had to go through our entire pretrial diversion program. And so one of the ways that we protect our heritage is that we give people consequences. I understand that some people thought that they should be punished more. But with nonviolent offenses, if we are going to divert some nonviolent offenses, but not all, we're doing it wrong. I have to abide by the policies that I set for my office. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Serna.
One of the main findings of a district attorney's office is accountability. And I think that accountability must be had, especially when it comes to my culture growing up here, and to our beautiful landscape. That being said, in this particular instance for the obelisk, what I would have done is I would have prosecuted these individuals to the fullest. I would have made sure that everybody was able to see what actually happened, how it was adjudicated, whether there was a plea deal or not, whether it went to trial. I believe that the public deserved to know what actually happened. I currently still don't know what happened during the obelisk. And there was supposed to be a report that I haven't seen yet, and I don't think anybody else has seen yet. So we need to hold people accountable in these types of situations to ensure that not only our culture is preserved, but also that people don't get away a slap on the wrist without any explanation whatsoever.
Thank you. This is a 2-minute question. How do you plan to correct the revolving door for repeat criminals? We'll begin with Mr. Serna.
And I'm sorry, was it
2.
So when it comes to habitual offenders, that has so many different aspects to it. Where we really see habitual offenders is when it comes to addiction. And a lot of these crimes are property crimes, they're nonviolent. With our recent constitutional amendment, we can only have people hold them for 72 hours. So we're starting to see people reoffend right away because they're trying to feed that addiction, and they can't help it. So there comes a point where we need to, yes, focus on diversion, focus on treatment, because it's really about saving lives in that respect. But there also comes a time when people are unwilling to address their own addiction. And I have family members, I have friends who suffer from addiction. I'm sure everybody here has family members and friends who suffer from addiction, and it's horrible to see. But it does come to a point as a prosecutor and with the criminal justice system to say, you know what, enough's enough. And we must address this situation either with incarceration or with other diversionary courts, which I would love to bring to the office. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Carmack-Alquist.
Yes. So the revolving door of justice, I think what people, when they hear that, what they think of is that someone gets arrested and they get out the very next morning. And I completely agree that that's ridiculous. It's frustrating. It frustrates my office. It frustrates the judges. I think it even frustrates public defenders. And so to that end, I have been working with and lobbying the governor very hard, very, very much, to put forth a bill that will pass our legislation. I've been working with her on the special session to come up with better language for a pretrial detention bill. With regard to habitual offenders that my opponent mentioned, agreed. At some point, we have to call it, and people end up needing to go to prison. We don't have any other options for them. After we've tried diversion, we've tried treatment. That's why on the very first day that I walked into the office, I imposed a policy for all of my attorneys that if somebody comes in that has a prior felony or 2 or 3 or 10, they have to impose what's called our habitual offender enhancements, which adds time, mandatory time to their sentences. And that has been happening because we have that policy across the board when people take pleas or they are convicted. As an example, I just did a trial in October where a man has been terrorizing this community for about 10 years. I got that conviction, and I was able to impose twice habitual offender, 2-time habitual offender enhancements. So now he's serving 5 years in prison because we had that opportunity to impose those enhancements. And so the way we stop the revolving door of justice is once diversion doesn't work, we put them into prison. We take them out of our community so that they are not terrorizing our community members anymore.
Thank you. A 2-minute question. How do you plan to address the DWI problem in Santa Fe, beginning with Ms. Carmack-Aldries?
Absolutely. I'm actually very excited to talk about the DWIs and the conviction rate. When I took office, I would say that there was a culture of failure at the district attorney's office with regard to prosecuting DWIs. We were looking at things like 30%, 36% conviction rates, 42% conviction rates. Over half of the people were getting charged with DWI and walking right out the door with absolutely no consequences. And I saw that and I realized that the problem, we didn't know exactly where the problem was coming from, why we were losing 1 out of every 2 or 2 out of every 3 cases. And so we instituted this policy, and it took revamping, and we continued to work it, and we continued to work it. And I can say it is working. We are getting 87% of people convicted. If you come into Santa Fe County and you drink and drive, there's a 9 out of 10 chance that you are going to face accountability, you are going to get convicted, and you are going to have to go through the DWI programs. The impact on DWI in our community and statewide, it's a scourge. It is absolutely terrible. What I wanted to do was change the old school way of doing things, which is just, well, cases got dismissed, oh well. And I wanted to make it so that we had true accountability, because true accountability comes with convictions. Yes, my policy is that we dismiss the case, we press pause on that case on day 1. But once we have worked with law enforcement to get all of the pieces of evidence that we need in order to successfully prosecute that case, we refile those cases. And once we refile those cases, 87% of people are convicted. We're not dismissing cases forever. We are refiling them because we can prove it and we can prosecute these people and get those convictions.
Thank you. Mr. Cerno.
Thank you. True accountability. I agree. True accountability. I would like to look at the numbers specifically with this conviction rate, because as I said, I would eliminate this policy right off of the bat. And I would do that because we need to prosecute DWI offenders. Now, if we don't have every piece of evidence, we can still move forward in a good faith basis. I can't tell you how many cases I tried as a younger attorney with just the officer and a breath card. And that being said, I would challenge my opponent to provide the numbers of where this 86% comes, because I contend to you that that doesn't take into consideration the number of cases that have not yet been refiled but have been dismissed. So yes, when you cherry pick cases, you can create a really good statistic.
Excuse me, Mr. Cerna, we're not going to allow
I
that.
apologize. So I would address it in prosecuting every single case that has enough evidence to move forward. And I think that there's deterrence within even just the prosecution. Let's say we don't get a conviction. When you try somebody, that can't be a good position to be on that side of the table where somebody's trying to prove your guilt in front of 12 jurors or 6 jurors, depending on which court you're in. So I think even if, let's say we don't get a conviction, that still acts as a deterrent so that we don't have people reoffending because the case was never refiled. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a 2-minute question. What resources do you need to deal with protesters and still protect their First Amendment rights? And we're beginning with Mr. Cerna.
Well, I think that's a question that involves not only the district attorney's office, but also the city and law enforcement, because protesters would be addressed by them first, and if there were any arrests, it would come to my office. So with that, I think that we need more resources for officers. We need more training to deal with protesters. But when it comes to actually coming into our office, we just need to have the good prosecutors to ensure that we know the law, that we address the issues as they come, and that we prosecute them effectively. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Carmack? Oh, wait.
Yes, thank you. With regard to, I want to circle back to the last question. With regard to the DWI statistics, it is on the DA's website. It's first-jda.com. It has all the raw numbers and everything broken down. So you can look at those numbers and check for yourself. There's also another tab for the obelisk report. It is on the website as well. We are transparent. We put everything on our website. Now, with regard to resources for protesters, obviously, attorneys are not running around, or my attorneys are not running around at protests, but what we need to have is active involvement of our law enforcement and community partners to help mediate disputes that arise. For example, the most recent protest was up in Rio Arriba County at the Oñate statue. And that resulted in a man nearly losing his life. And I was there that day. As soon as the shooting happened, I got in my car and I drove up to Rio Arriba to offer everything at my office's disposal to help the Rio Arriba County Sheriff successfully investigate and prosecute this case, and now I am actually prosecuting it myself. We've had several, it's working its way through the court system. I believe it is set for trial. The role of the prosecutor in this is when a law is broken to look at the case, to work with law enforcement to put together the strongest case, and then to prosecute that case. When it's violent like this one, we're going to prosecute it to the absolute fullest extent of the law. If it's nonviolent, we will look at diversion. I think that's the only right thing to do when people are committing nonviolent crimes across the board.
Thank you. Mr. Cerna?
I was the first one to
Oh,
answer.
I'm so sorry. I've gotten
go again
confused
if
on
you'd
my
like.
grid. No. Here we go. This is also 2 minutes. What are you doing or planning on doing to help victims of crime? And we are beginning with you, Mr. Cerna.
So currently I'm a special prosecutor, as an AODA employee, as special prosecutor, I had the opportunity to conduct training throughout the state and at our conferences. Victims of crime, this is special to me because I actually specialize in domestic violence, which is a beast in and of itself. But what we need to ensure is that victims are heard first and foremost. We need to ensure that they trust our victim advocates, we need to ensure that they trust law enforcement, because that can be an issue at times, depending on whether it's sexual assault case. It's very difficult, especially with sexual assault cases, it's very difficult for victims to open up. So we need to ensure that that trust is there. Then we need to prosecute their cases to the fullest extent of the law, but also with respect to what their wishes are. Many times, it's very traumatic for victims to not only be interviewed by defense attorney, be interviewed by police officers for that matter, but to actually go in front of a jury of 12 people, a judge sitting up, a defense attorney ready to go after them, and then a courtroom full of people. That's very difficult and traumatic for anybody, but especially victims of crime. So we need to ensure that they're safe, that they feel comfortable, that they trust us, and the ultimate goal is to make them a survivor. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Carmack-Ald, please.
Yes, I mostly agree with my opponent. The thing that we need to do for victims as a prosecutor's office is the most important thing is to make contact almost immediately to let victims know that we are there and we care for them. And the way that you do that is by having a very strong victim advocacy program. Those are people that are employed by the district attorney's office that reach out to every type of victim that comes through our office. We offer them resources. We put them in contact with Solace Crisis Center, other community crisis centers, DV shelters. We set them up with resources through the Crime Victims Reparation Fund. So we have to have people in our office that can be that conduit to the different outside resources that can really help them through the hardest time in their life. And then, once we have established that relationship, then my attorneys, who are well-trained in how to do trauma-based prosecution, trauma-informed prosecution, they reach out and they explain the whole system, the way that it's going to work, how it's going to go. And we do take into account what their wishes are with regard to this case. We don't always go along with exactly what they say, but we explain to them and work with them and go to their place of employment or their home so that they feel the most comfortable, so that they understand what is going to happen, why it's happening, and how we can make it easier for them.
Thank you. This is a 2-minute question. What technologic improvements, if any, does the district attorney's office need? And over to you, Ms. Carmack-Ald, please.
Oh, goodness, I could really talk about this one. The district attorney's office, we are still operating, well, we're improving it, but when I first took office, we were still operating on kind of an analog system, and all of our police agencies had moved on to HDMI. And so I went to the legislature and immediately got $400,000 in special funding so that we could start investing in upgrading our technological systems and buying new systems that would help us do case management so that we can watch a case go through on the computer, go through every part of the prosecution. We needed ways, we had no ways to pull statistics. We still don't have that. We've bought the program, it's being built, it is going to happen, but we had no real good technological help. And for example, on a simple case, an officer would send in a body-worn camera. It would take us 24 hours to download onto our system. So every case, imagine 30 cases coming in with 60 officers. It was taking forever. So we really have had to invest in those resources so that we could be able to talk with the law enforcement agencies, or at least have our computer systems talk. And so we need to continue that. And as I keep reminding legislators and the governor, when you upgrade the police, you have to upgrade the downstream people, because otherwise we're still operating in the dark. And I think they've finally started to listen, and we are really seeing true improvements technologically in the office.
Mr. Cerna.
Thank you. Luckily, in my capacity with the Administrative Office of District Attorney, I was the interim director while our director was out on leave. And we're actually working on a new system statewide with AODA to revamp the entire system, because I do agree with my opponent. The system did need some work. And that's why we have addressed that with AODA, and we're currently rebuilding the entire system to make sure that all prosecutors have access to files throughout the state. In an ideal world, we would all be on the same system. The DA's office, law enforcement, the courts, prisons, we'd all be on the same system, CYFD, so that we're not missing, nothing's falling through the cracks with regard to evidence, victims, witnesses, what have you, what's happening with defendants. So it's in place. I was happy to help out with that inception, and I agree that it needed to be done, but it is being done, and I'm very proud of that.
Yes. Okay, this question is, nope, got it right that time. 2 minutes. What do you perceive as the greatest obstacle to justice? Mr. Cerna.
That is a very good question. The greatest obstacle to justice. I believe that it can be the perception of what justice is. Because you have different ideals of what justice actually is. In my opinion, justice has many hats. Sometimes it can be punitive. Other times it can be compassionate. And that's what I'll bring to this office. You know, I always used to say, let's be smart on crime, not just tough on crime, but let's be smart on crime. Well, that's exactly what we need to do in the 1st Judicial District Attorney's Office. We need to ensure that the addicted individuals in our community, that we try to get them the help we need. We need to ensure that the homeless get the help that they need. We need to ensure that anybody that hurts a child or the elderly should spend the rest of their life in prison. Statutes willing, of course. And then everything in the middle. I mean, we can take things by a case-by-case basis to determine what the best possible outcome, not only for the individuals involved, but for the community as a whole. And that's what I think, I hope that answered your question.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you.
I would say that the biggest obstacle to justice is a lack of accountability in our system. It has been a statewide problem for years and years that justice takes too long. Cases get dismissed here and everywhere on technicalities. Cases don't get to trial. And so people that have committed a crime, that have a case, they see those cases dismissed and they think, I can do it again because nothing's going to happen to me. And that is what I have tried to bring to our office. Accountability for people committing crimes, accountability for staffers in my own office. They have expectations that they are bound to meet. And I provide that training and that support so that they do meet it. And when they meet it, what that means is that accountability is brought to defendants and criminals. And that can mean a diversion program, it can mean treatment, but it can also mean prison. But we have to have accountability. We have to have people face justice, face court, and not see their cases dismissed on technicalities or dismissed because an officer didn't show up, or like down in Albuquerque, somebody paid off an officer to not show up. Those officers need accountability too. And so to that end, we work with our law enforcement agencies to make sure that officers show up to court every single time. And the root of that is accountability. Everybody has to do their part in our system to make sure that criminals are held accountable.
Right. This is a 2-minute question. How do you implement ERPO, extreme risk protection orders, the red flag law, complaints, and requests to order weapon relinquishment, and what could be improved? And we'll begin with you.
The ERPO law is sort of one of my babies. I have worked this entire administration to get law enforcement trained up. I've worked with the woman who wrote that legislation. Her name is Sheila Lewis. We have met, I don't know how many times, to train officers to file those petitions to take guns away from people that they believe are a danger to themselves or to others. We have worked with our office. We now have an expert that has done 3 of these. It pains me to say we have only done 3 of these. It is not something that is in the forefront of law enforcement's minds when they confront a situation. And so we have been offering training. We have been working with them to create policies so that we can get those cases in front of us, so that we can help represent the officers in court to get guns taken away from people who represent a danger. And so ERPO is very, very important. We actually have a case right now in the Court of Appeals where we brought a case thinking that a person was dangerous, and the judge disagreed with us down at the district court level. And we filed an appeal so that we could get clarification and hopefully open the system up a little bit so that we can actually start filing those when we think that there's an issue of a danger. At the present moment, only an officer or a family member can file those petitions. And so we are asking the Supreme Court, no, let prosecutors file it. Prosecutors are the lawyers. We're the ones that should go in front of the judge and actually argue these and hopefully get those guns out of people's hands that are a danger to themselves or to the community.
Mr. Cerna?
I think that guns have become such a dangerous issue, especially here in New Mexico, where we're seeing so many guns being run by children, in fact, which is scary. And the reason why they're running guns with children is because if caught and prosecuted, they will be tried as juveniles, not as adults. With regard to these laws, anytime a gun is involved or the threat of a gun is involved, we need to ensure that our officers are properly trained, that we support them as much as we can to ensure that the public is safe from these individuals, and to ensure that the investigation in any allegation made is properly done so that individuals aren't inappropriately suspected of these particular issues. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a 2-minute question. How would you address the fentanyl crisis in our community? Mr. Cerna?
So the fentanyl crisis, which is still opioid, overtook the heroin crisis when I first ran for office, which has been an unfortunate epidemic, not only here in Santa Fe, but especially in northern New Mexico, Espanola specifically, where I grew up, where we see an intergenerational addiction, where grandparents, parents, and grandkids are all doing drugs together, which is a scary thought, but it's a harsh reality. Again, if I had a magic wand, resources would be provided not only to address it early on in schools with education, but also services available to everybody in all parts of New Mexico. One of the main issues we see, and I was chief deputy in Taos there for a while, but there's a town called Carson where when we would try to get people into programs, they didn't have a vehicle to get there, and they didn't have any friends who could help them get there. So these services that are readily available for them in Taos were not readily available to them considering their circumstance. So these issues absolutely need to be addressed, and it really comes down to a resource issue, which I've lobbied, throughout my career to get those resources, and unfortunately, we just don't have enough. Thank you.
Yes. And I'm afraid this is going to be our last question. Oh, I'm sorry. Lost the grid,
The root of the fentanyl problem, I think, really started under the Martinez administration when she shut down the Medicaid-funded rehab and treatment centers. And then the pandemic exacerbated that problem, and we just saw rehabilitation facilities decimated across the state. We simply don't have enough beds. In Santa Fe alone, we need to probably quadruple the amount of beds that we have available to get people the treatment. That truly is going to be the only way that we are ever going to get a handle on the fentanyl. Before that, it was heroin. In a year, it's going to be something else. And so we have got to lobby for those resources. To that end, I have been talking with the governor about the special session that's upcoming to please restore all of that funding that went away from Medicaid-funded rehabilitation clinics, rehabilitation programs, so that we have some place to send these people. They cannot get, if they can't get beds, they can't get treatment. And without treatment, they're just going to continue to pile up and get worse. And worst case scenario, they're gonna OD and they're gonna die. And so this isn't just a criminal justice issue. This is a public health issue, and we have absolutely got to increase our treatment options.
Thank you. Okay, now this is the 2-minute question and is our last question of the evening, unfortunately, because we had some great questions here. And we're going to begin with Ms. Carmack-Altwies. Do you believe all New Mexicans have fair and, I'm sorry, I can't read that, something access to legal assistance in the legal system? If not, what reforms do you support, and could you explain them?
Well, the answer, this is going to be the most lawyer answer ever. It depends, sort of. Yes and no. All New Mexicans do not, in general, have proper access to legal services. I'm going to focus mostly on the public defender and criminal justice. Our public defender, I think, is underfunded and it's under-resourced. And I see prosecutors out in the office that are out in the audience that are kind of rolling their eyes, but it's true. And we need. They are part of a 3-legged stool in the criminal justice system. You have the courts, you have the prosecutors, and you have the public defenders. They need more people, and they need more resources. Otherwise, it is simply not fair what happens to them. I work with the public defender. I was actually a public defender, and I saw those issues firsthand with huge caseloads and not being able to offer proper services. But now as a prosecutor, I also see it because we see delay after delay after delay because people can't get defense attorneys to show up to court, or they have defense attorneys that are overwhelmed and they can't deal with that case that day. So they need to be better resourced in order to make our criminal justice system work better so that it is fair to everyone.
Mr. Cerna.
And so just to be clear, so it's fair access to
Legal assistance and the legal systems.
Okay. Hypothetically, yes. Practically, I don't believe so. But I think this is an issue that moves beyond just the criminal justice system. I think it's a potential issue as a whole, and it really comes down to socioeconomic status, in my opinion. Because we see the effects that the lower socioeconomic status has on crime. They're incarcerated more. They're charged more. They're arrested more. So it's not just a access to justice issue, in my opinion. I think there's an underlying issue that also needs to be addressed, and that's just equity for all, regardless of where you come from or how much your parents make or what car you drive. We need more resources to ensure that everybody has equal access, not only to representation, but to any and all opportunities. But hypothetically, yes, but practically, no.
Well, thank you. It's now time to move to our candidates' 1-minute concluding statements, and we're going to begin with Mr. Cerna.
Thank you much. Well, thank you all again for coming today, and thank you to the League and to Santa Fe Prep. Beautiful campus, by the way. I really hope that you all listen to both of us because we both bring different things to the table. Again, if elected, I will address the DWI, what I believe is a DWI policy that is failed. I will also ensure that the handling of the finances in the office will be done in an appropriate, prudent manner. And I will also ensure that transparency is paramount, that nobody's First Amendment right will be violated. And lastly, the homelessness and the mental health issues that we have in our community, we really need to address them as a community. Thank you. I respectfully ask for your vote. My name is Marco Cerna.
Well, I'll ask you to hold your applause till the evening is our entire forum is concluded. Ms. Carmack, please.
Yes, thank you. And I also want to thank everyone that's here and online for listening attentively. I want to end this forum with another story. When I first started practicing in Santa Fe, I was a criminal defense attorney, and I had a case where a client was charged with armed robbery. The evidence was strong against him, and I should have lost that case. I took that case to trial, and I didn't lose. I got a hung jury, and my client walked out of that courtroom, and he shouldn't have, and it really bothered me. And it bothered me because the trial techniques and ways that I saw that the office was being run was not good. It needed training, it needed resources, it needed competent, experienced attorneys. And so I literally, within 6 months, I went to the DA's office to offer my services because this community deserves a well-run, high-functioning DA's office. And that's what I'm building every single day. Thank you again to the League of Women Voters, and I hope I've earned your support on June 4th.
That concludes, That concludes this evening's District Attorney First Judicial District Candidate Forum. I want to thank Phil Casas, the editor of the Santa Fe New Mexican, and Patrick Dorsey, the publisher, as well as Henry Lopez of Lopez Integrated Technologies and Matt Wilson for broadcasting the forum. It will be available for future streaming on the New Mexican's website, sfnewmexican.com, and on our website, lwvsfc.org. For more information on election and candidates, read the League's voter guide. It's available at lwvsfc.org and vote411.org. We want to remind you that if your question was not asked, you're welcome to stay after the forum to talk to the candidates. For those of you who are watching online, if you have questions for the candidates, go to vote411.org for the candidates' contact information. There is a candidate forum for County Commissioners Districts 2 and 4 on Tuesday, April 30th, and that can also be found at our website. Be sure to make your voice heard in this election by voting, early or absentee or at the polls on June 4th. Please join me in thanking the candidates for their participation. And good night. I like your shoes. Good evening, candidates and audience members. Thank you for attending the League of Women Voters of Santa Fe County's Candidate Forum for County Clerk. I'm Hannah Burling, and I will be the moderator. On behalf of the League, I want to express our gratitude to the Santa Fe New Mexican for broadcasting our candidate forums this year as a service to the community. And I'd like to introduce Pat Dorsey, the publisher.
Thank you very much. And thanks everyone for being here and also for watching on SantaFeNewMexican.com. These are important forums for good civil debate and civic participation, very important. And Santa Fe New Mexican has been involved in this for just going on 175 years this November. So we support it, obviously, for a long, long time, and we're proud to be a supporter here of the debates. Thanks to the League of Women Voters for putting this on, very important. And thanks to the candidates, because it's tough to do what you all do, and we need folks to step up and do that. So thank you very much. Appreciate
You're very
it.
welcome.
Thank you. Okay, the League is committed to civil discourse. The candidates have agreed to follow the League protocols for candidate forums, including respecting the time limits for their responses, not engaging in crosstalk, and being mutually respectful, courteous, constructive, and orderly, even when they disagree. The questions we ask will be selected by our screening panel to focus on the issues that seem to generate the most interest. Questions that are similar will be consolidated, and questions that are directed to one candidate or contain a personal attack will be eliminated. Due to time constraints, not all questions can be asked. We invite you to stay after the forum to talk to the candidates. If you haven't already submitted your questions, you can email them to lwvsfc@gmail.com now or at any time during the forum. For those of you who are attending in person, write your question on the 3x5 note cards that are being distributed. Submit one question per note card, and please write legibly. Hold the card up when finished so our runners can pick it up. Our timekeeper, Mary Shrubin, is sitting in the front. When you have 30 seconds left, she will hold up a yellow warning sign. And when your time is up, she will hold up the red stop sign. At that point, we ask that you wind up your response immediately. If not, I'll interrupt out of fairness to everyone. In the interest of time, please save your applause until the end of the forum. Before I introduce the candidates, I want to review the responsibilities of the county clerk. The clerk is the ex officio recorder of Santa Fe County and may legally record any document that is certified. The office also issues marriage and occupational licenses. The county clerk's Bureau of Elections administers all elections in the county. We will begin with 2-minute opening statements by the candidates and conclude with 1-minute closing statements. And first, we will hear from candidate Geraldine Salazar.
Thank you. Good evening, Democrats, Republicans, and Independents. I am Geraldine Salazar, your former Santa Fe County Clerk from 2013 to 2020, a member of the Democratic Party. Tonight, I ask all Democrats in attendance to please vote Geraldine Salazar in the 2024 primary election. I know that the people of Santa Fe County want an experienced, respectful, and ethical county clerk who cares about the people, who will represent and serve all citizens when elected to office of the Santa Fe County Clerk. I bring years of experience in public service. I am dedicated to continuing the excellent customer service the Santa Fe County Clerk's Office was known for during my administration. After all of the campaigning is over, the fact remains, when re-elected Santa Fe County Clerk, I will continue to manage this government office in the best interest of the public. I am uniquely qualified to once again be your county clerk. I have expertise to manage and lead this government office for the next 4 years. I promise to be accountable, to maintain public trust in government affairs by always remembering that I serve the interest of the public and not my own personal interests. I am a firm believer of government transparency and practiced transparency on a daily basis when I was your county clerk. I will continue to have an open door policy during regular business hours to ensure public access to the clerk's office. I respectfully request your vote in the 2024 primary election during early voting, May 7th through June 1st, or on Election Day, Tuesday, June 4th, for re-election. Thank you for your consideration. Please visit my website, geraldinesalazar.org, for more information. Thank you.
And now we will hear from candidate Catherine Clark.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for having me and the Santa Fe New Mexican. I just want to briefly acknowledge that there are two women in this room who have held the job previous to me, Geraldine Salazar and Valerie Espinosa. They have been Santa Fe County clerks, and I want to acknowledge that this is not an easy job, and so I very much admire the work that they've done. Myself, as a county clerk, we focused on the idea that my third day in office was January 6th. And that really brought into perspective the idea that elections has changed. In New Mexico and all over the country, the legislation has been changed so rapidly that more legislation has shifted in the last 3 years than at any other time in elections. We have responded to that call. We have improved our safety measures. We have put our digital records online. We have improved our turnout in Santa Fe County. We've worked on ADA compliance. We have a youth outreach program. We have, for the first time, a training coordinator. These are all the improvements we've done in Santa Fe County, and they're all in the interest of making sure that we protect our elections and that we serve the public, yes, but also that the office is more accessible. One of the things that we've noticed is that not everyone can come in during business hours. You have to be able to have access to the office after hours. So we've improved that by having the most drop boxes per capita in Santa Fe County, 75% of which are drive-up. We have all of our documents online, and for the first time ever, you can purchase them online with a credit card, because credit cards were not something that was in the office previously. So the vision of the office is a shared vision. The commission has purchased me a new building for elections operation. The legislature has given me $2.5 million. There is a shared vision of modernizing this office for the 21st century, and that is what I've ushered in and what I continue to do and will continue to do as your Santa Fe County clerk. So I hope you can count. I hope I can count on your vote, and you can go to my website, catherineclark.com, KATHARINECLARK.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our first question is a 1-minute question. How do your abilities, experience, and education prepare you for this office? Ms. Salazar.
My education, I think that mainly would really propel. I think what really propelled me was when I was a teenage activist in my community as a member, a teenager, seeing everything was going on in my community. There was high violence. There were children that were actually dying. And so that was my first step towards public service. After that, going to the University of California in San Diego. In addition to that, graduating from UNM with a degree in sociology, with an emphasis in criminal justice, criminology, and deviance. And also in the 70s, going to the College of Santa Fe as a community social services person. So I think all of those together brought me closer and closer to the compelling efforts that I have always had about public service. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Clark.
Thank you. I think I would have to say that as a military Air Force brat traveling all over, I always found myself attracted to the groups of people who were unheard, and I became an activist, especially in high school. And then I became more and more interested. I went to Berkeley. I got a neuroscience degree, and I was very interested in how we can get more people out to vote, because I started participating in campaigns, and I saw the difference it was when a person had the office of county clerk, and we saw that people could not vote, versus when there was a county clerk who knew what they were doing and could implement all the changes, then people could vote. And I became very interested. I came here to New Mexico and got an MBA in operations, a degree I use every day, and was very active in the Democratic Party, so I decided I wanted to run for clerk because I wanted to protect everyone's right to vote. And I guess I'm out of time, so I'll just they say thank you.
Thank you. And I swore this wouldn't happen again. Ms. Salazar, you have already oh, yes, I'm lost. Okay, here we go again.
We might all be.
All right. In your experience as county clerk, what are you most proud of? And this is 1 minute question, and we are beginning with Ms. Clark. Now I found myself. Yes.
Thank you. I think as county clerk is a few separate things. The first is that we really do go that extra mile when it comes to making sure that people have access to the office and we have access to the ballot. So one of the things that we've done, of course, is install the most drop boxes, 75% of which are drive-up, simply because I have a friend who's disabled. It takes her a long time to get out of the car, and so it was very important to me to make sure that we emphasize ADA compliance in our office. The second thing is that we've built a very great team, a team that really believes in making sure we do go the extra mile. So, for instance, in our office, we actually will go knock on a door of a voter who has not cured their ballot to make sure that that vote counts, because we truly believe that we have to do everything possible to make sure that Santa Fe County voters, their vote counts. And of course, the modernization, all of the things that we've done, you can see that on my website, but we've made vast improvements to this office, dragged it into this century, and we hope to continue that in our next term.
Okay, Ms. Salazar.
Did you want to repeat the question, or I'll just go ahead?
Yes, in your experience as county clerk, what are you most proud of?
Well, I'm most proud of all the 8 years that I was county clerk. In fact, of all my career, because of the importance of that office. In addition to that, what I'm most proud of is that I and the staff that was with me during 2020 for the COVID pandemic and the chaos that was occurring in 2020 all over the nation, the COVID pandemic, and then all the laws that we had to work with legislators, the Secretary of States, the 32 other county clerks I had to work with. We implemented a lot of the laws that benefited the 2022 election, and that is a fact. MIT did do a study of the 2020 and the 2022. So because of that, everything that we put in through the legislature, we created better legal policies, statutes, mandates. All of that benefited, and it will benefit to the future elections in addition to the 2020 and 2022.
Thank you. Ms. Clark?
Can you repeat the question? I think I already answered that.
No, I've already done that one. Sorry. You will be the first person on... Did we not ask you in your experience as county clerk, what are you most proud of? And you did answer that right.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
I thought I was confused.
So now we're going to start with Ms. Salazar. It's much more confusing with only 2 candidates. When we have 6 or so, it's very simple. 2 minutes. Question: what are the 3 most pressing issues facing the county clerk right now?
Most important pressing 3 issues are voter confidence, customer service, and also election security. I think that's been very important. Ever since we brought Santa Fe County Clerk to the 21st century, when we implemented voting machines, electronic voting machines, and vote centers, I mean, that has been an issue. We have to be concerned about that. But I think that with the people that are committed to the work that they're doing, I think that we can do it. Plus, I also have experience working with federal security professionals. So we brought them in to take care of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Clark.
Thank you. I think the 3 most pressing issues, the first is that unfortunately it is election security and safety. What we know from the FBI is that clerks' offices are in danger. Anyone who is running elections may very well have fentanyl sent to their office. They have suggested that we only open mail with gloves and that we keep the office secure, and that we make sure that we are monitoring all of our mail, because there are folks out there, domestic terrorists, who want to kill folks who are in the clerk's office. So that actually is top of mind for many of us who are election officials across the country. The next, of course, is the idea that we expand accessibility to the office. We do that through modernization. You know, one of the things we learned from COVID is that people want to be able to access the office in different ways. So we started a new website, santafe.vote, where you can always get election information. We have started an online presence so we can combat misinformation. We have a command center and help desk that we hire during the election cycle that is bilingual so that we can always answer the phone. Because what we know is that people want to access the office in different ways, whether that's digital, whether that's social media, whether that's after hours, and we've been working on expanding that capacity. And the final thing is that, unfortunately, election officials are not necessarily paid that well. So one of the things that clerks all over the country have been working on is increasing pay. So we increased the pay of our poll workers. In the last legislative session, all 32 county clerks and myself advocated for doing that. I have increased pay for early voting election workers, and I'm currently working with our county commission on expanding pay for the folks who are in our office. They've given me some money, and we're reorganizing the office to make sure that we create a career ladder so that we both have institutional knowledge and we can also retain workers because we're paying them for the really hard work that they're doing. So I think this is something we have seen all over the country. Election officials are leaving elections, and we need to make sure we maintain that institutional knowledge so that when I leave office or whoever takes office next can make sure they have a great staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is 2 minutes. What steps would you take to increase voter turnout in the county? Ms. Clark?
Okay, I love this question. So right now we have the #1 turnout in New Mexico, and that's very exciting. And the thing what we're seeing is that we've now passed permanent absentee. So we know that folks are going to have more access to the ballot. And what we want to do is increase more mail-in voting, because we know that when someone has a ballot, then we can either the campaigns or the office can push them to turn that ballot in. That's sort of taking the first step. So we want to increase mail ballot voting. And that's why I've had the county commission purchase me a new building. We have investments in having new machinery so that we can have absentee voting. The second is I want to have an app. An app essentially is not for everybody. I know some people won't use it, but young people all the time tell me I have a really hard time remembering, and I want to be able to text them to remind them to vote if they sign up for that notification. I've worked on a Democracy 101 program going into all of the high schools, advocating with a mock election about how elections work. We are trying to make sure we get in front of every high school student in Santa Fe County. We pre-register them to vote, and then when they turn 18, that voter profile turns on, and then we can push them to vote. We are really, really hoping that we can still maintain highest turnout in New Mexico, but I have a friend in Oregon, and he's got a 95% turnout, and that's our goal, really, is 95% turnout in Santa Fe County.
Wow. Ms. Salazar?
Would you please repeat the question for all of us?
Yes, of course. What steps would you take to increase voter turnout in the county?
Thank you. Before I left the county clerk's office, I had created a position, the outreach coordinator, and also a trainer and messenger. So throughout my 8 years, I updated and I created new positions so that we could increase voter participation, because I'm a person, I look at systems approach and I look at everything what's going on. Where do we have weaknesses? Where can we improve? So I continuously worked on those positions to increase voter participation, and the current clerk is able to utilize the outreach coordinator in that way, rather than each different staff in the office that were not truly just specifically designated. That position is there. And for security, I also created a position that's in law, and when I was reading the laws of New Mexico, there is a portion in the law that states messengers can be used, and I thought, perfect, that's a position I need to create. So throughout those years, I did that work so that I could pass on the baton and continue with that work of voter confidence, voter participation, training for staff and poll workers. So those positions were left in place, and my hope was that there would be increase in participation. But also, if we reflect back onto the MIT research, it talks about the work that we did in 2020 has benefited the work in 2022 and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a 2-minute question. What protection can be or is provided for election workers? Ms. Salazar?
The protection that's been around for a very long time, even from long before even with the clerk that's here today and when I was clerk, is that we have a sheriff's department that works very closely with us. During the 2020 election, when I was out in the field on election day and early voting, I had worked in the office and at home and also in the field. I saw on election day specifically, I had never seen the Republicans had watchers, challengers everywhere, even on tribal land. I had never seen that before. So I know that we have to prepare, because when I talked to some of them, and some of the poll workers that were coming in to deliver the votes on and their packets, they said I had been followed. And I wondered, what do you mean you're followed? And then I saw people coming in following them, so I approached them and asked them, why are you following? And they told me we were told to follow so that we could see that the packets or whatever they're delivering is appropriately delivered. So I know that we need the sheriff. We also need to probably train poll workers about safety, because I know that the county provides us safety as employees, so I think that has to continue. I also want you to know that it was a horrendous election, as all of you know, in 2020. It did not intimidate me. And I do understand I need to be careful. I'm not bulletproof, but I needed to be out in the public during an election that was very difficult to deal with, and that everything that was going on at that time.
Thank you. Ms. Clark?
So the question of poll worker safety, of course, is one that is a national conversation. It's one of the reasons why New Mexico recently passed a law under Peter Wirth to make sure that we could not open carry in polling sites anymore. One, because it is very intimidating, and two, because just like a bar, perhaps voting is not the place to be carrying a firearm. And so the compromise bill was that we would not have open carry in polling sites any longer. One of the things that we're very concerned about is as active shooters. It is just the reality in this era of social unrest, unfortunately, and we know that we're going to have to make sure that we have trained our poll workers on active shooter training, which we do. We have a consistent training on here's the exits, here's leave everything and escape, because we don't want you to get shot at a polling site. And these are the things that poll workers express. We do have a safety training. We have additional training by CISA and best practices by the FBI. And the reality is that we also have escape plans at every single polling site. We document where all the exits are, and we make a safety plan. We also have a de-escalation training. All of the poll workers go through a de-escalation training to ensure that they do not accidentally escalate a situation that does not need to be escalated. We've also instituted what's called a command center at the clerk's office. And essentially every one of those poll workers can type to us that there might be a problem so that we can call the sheriff. The sheriff is really, really excellent at being responsive, but actually not every presiding judge wants the sheriff in their polling site, because we've been told by voters that it could be considered intimidating, which is why we hire extra security that is not necessarily in uniform. And we've actually had the fire department assist us in having line control at some of the polling sites. So we're very mindful of safety, but we have emergency plans and safety protocols in place to ensure that everyone is safe, including the voters. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a 2-minute question. What resources do you need to deal with This one has crept in from, I guess it's, what resources do you need to deal with protesters and still protect their First Amendment rights? We did have this in the district attorney candidates forum, which is why. So this is 2 minutes. Ms. Clark?
So I think this is very similar to the previous question, but I do think that we are going to see probably protesters. There is a significant interest in having uncommitted this Democratic primary. We know that people are feeling unhappy, and so they want to be able to protest, and that is their First Amendment right to do so. So, of course, there is the 50 and 100-yard line for, electioneering, and then 50 yards for advocacy groups to be too close to the door. But one of the things that my office is going to be instituting is a designated protest area, essentially for protesters, so that there's a safe place that they can protest and have their say, but also that voters, particularly older voters or ADA voters that need to be close to the door to get to the polling site, will not feel intimidated or blocked by those who are trying to express their First Amendment rights. So it is something that has to occur during an election, just like it does at any other election, but it is one that we have to, during kind of an era of people really feeling strongly the need to express themselves, we need to make sure we create a situation where everyone can be safe.
Ms. Salazar?
Yes, I think we've had laws in place about distancing from the polling site. My personal experience is having to go to one of the polling sites in 2020, and where a presiding judge needed assistance, so I went personally. Where I have a concern is someone is protesting in line to vote. And so after talking to this person and trying to be reasonable, I did call the sheriff's department, and they did come, and they helped me, and they took over. So I know the importance of maintaining contact with the sheriff's department, maintaining contact with presiding judges at the polling place, but also respecting people's right to protest. I think that's part of our civil rights. So thank you.
Thank you. And this next question, 2 minutes. Ms. Salazar, should the county have a mail-in ballot system? Explain.
Should they have a demand ballot system?
A mail-in ballot system. Explain.
Mail-in ballot system.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what we had during COVID is that we were able to pass a law for us to mail all absentee ballots out, correct? And so we had a greater participation. So I think that if we can do that, it would benefit in more participation. Did I get that question right? Mail ballot system.
Should the county have a mail-in ballot system?
What does that mean? Is the person, I mean, to me, it would mean different things.
Mm-hmm.
Just an absentee ballot, or like in California, all ballots are mailed in. Yes, that would be great. It would streamline the process more, because we experienced that with absentee ballots, automatic mail-outs. And so yes, and that helped us tremendously within the office in 2020. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Clark.
Okay, I'll take the question. So in 2020, we actually were not allowed to send everyone an absentee ballot. The Supreme Court actually denied that petition by the elected clerks. They wanted to, but the Supreme Court said, no, we have to follow the administrative rules, and that is that someone has to apply. So we were allowed to send out an absentee application, which actually a lot of people confuse with a ballot, and I know the clerk's office got a lot of complaints that we were sending so many ballots, but actually it was an application, and a lot of third-party advocacy groups were sending them to, confusing voters. But you had to request, and you still, until January of this year, had to request an absentee ballot every election. Now we have what's called permanent absentee, and that is always the first step to having an all-mail system. So essentially, once we start moving towards a certain percentage of people who are on the permanent absentee list, then legislatively we will be able to say, okay, now we don't need as many voting convenience centers for the precincts that have a higher participation of mail-in voting. And then we'll be able to move more and more. My goal is that we already have 1/3 of voters still participating in early voting and absentee voting, and we're hoping to see 50% by 2027. That's one of the reasons why we've put that foundation of a elections warehouse and money to modernize the office. So I'm hoping that Santa Fe County can be the first to have all mail. Of course, it'll never all be all mail, because people still want to vote election day, they still want to vote early, but this kind of collapsing, or this kind of expansion of how many people can get a ballot will actually increase our turnout, which is always our goal, higher participation in the democratic process. Thank you.
Thank you. A 2-minute question. What have you done to modernize/update the clerk's office through the use of computers and other 21st century means to make it easier to vote? And what specific plans do you have to help voters in the next 4 years? And Ms. Clark?
So, I'm getting the feedback, I'm so sorry. Okay, so one of the things that we've done is we have increased a texting program. So one of the things we heard about in 2020 is that people could not track their ballot. They didn't know when the ballot had arrived at the clerk's office, they didn't know when it got checked in, and they didn't know if it was going to be counted. So we actually instituted the first texting program or email tracking system where if you sign up, you'll get a text every time that ballot passes a certain different status. So whether we pick it up, it's qualified, it's going to count, we will send you a text, we will send you an email. We've also completely overhauled the ballot on demand system, so that's faster and more efficient. We have changed how we do the check-in so that it's more efficient. We have introduced santafe.vote, which is an easy-to-remember URL where all election information is going to be. There is a real-time wait time tracker, so that during voting hours, you can see how long the wait time is on the map to know what is the fastest place that I can vote. But now that MVD is going to be having a digital driver's license, my hope is that we can have what's called a digital voter information card. Of course, everyone will still have one of their traditional paper cards, but the idea is that for young people and for voters who got very used to using a QR code or want to have that access on their phone, they can have a digital voter information card. And that's just one of the things that we can do to increase voter turnout. We can also increase access to always having your voter information, empowering voters to know that your voter registration is always accessible to you. So these are just some of the things that we've done among many of the things that we've done in the clerk's office to modernize elections and hopefully see that the higher turnout that we're seeing is a direct impact of that.
Thank you. Ms. Salazar?
Would you please repeat the question?
Mm-hmm. What have you done to modernize/update the clerk's office through the use of computers and other 21st century means to make it easier to vote? And what specific plans do you have to help voters in the next 4 years?
Well, I'm not the current county clerk, and I know when I left, we developed a lot of things in the office. I think what's most important is that when we brought in electronic voting machines and vote centers, and then also I do like the fact that the Secretary of State's office and then all county clerks, well, the Secretary of State's office gave us capabilities to track absentee ballots, which was great. And now I understand that there's a push out. Once the current clerk's office receives those ballots, they can input it into the system, and then a text is pushed out to voters to say, we have your ballot, we received it, and therefore. And that was the next step to that process. So I think as we look at technology, what's important is to work with vendors, to work with other county clerks, and to see how else we can ensure that we get participation. And also, too, if I reflect back on the position I created of outreach coordinator, trainers, all of that, everything together that was done before I was county clerk, when I was county clerk, and now, all of that information, all of that technology will be utilized because we started it when we brought in the electronic voting systems. Then during that time, we were very concerned about that. So I made sure that our staff tested the machines, and we had certain glitches, but we were able to do it. We were able to even advise the vendor of the improvements we thought we needed in those machines before we actually put them out in during an election when those came in. Thank you.
Thank you. And here's a 2-minute question. How will your office better support the business community that relies on your office?
How will the office better support? Well, I think that's what I've been hearing lately about from title companies, real estate companies, and other companies that need to have access to the records, and especially the old records. I think that we have to have an open door policy for business people in our community because they were so used to the office in prior times, and that's from all county clerks to my time, that they had access and it did not impinge on their business. So that's something I want to see happen again, is that we do have an open door policy so that people have access to the clerk's office, that they can record. And I and others needed to do work at the clerk's office, and no one was utilizing the computers, the public computers out in the foyer. And I asked them, may I use them? And they said, no, you can't. You have to make an appointment. I said, but nobody's using them. And I was turned away. And that was very disappointing. So that did not only happen to me, that also happened to others. And they have shared that information. So I experienced it. So it is a fact based on my experience and then discussions with others who felt that they needed to get their business done. In addition to that, there was a young woman that I know very well, told me she had a very difficult time getting the absentee ballots for her family, which she had been authorized, and that people were very rude to her. And all I can do is listen, but when I experience something, it validates to me the lack of access for the general citizens, for businesses, and those who have contacted me and let me know, this is what I'm experiencing, what can we do? I even had a young woman call me from out of state for assistance, track me down through my family, knowing who I was, to say, how can you help me? I was out of office, enjoying retirement. I had no interest of returning. But because of all the issues that I've heard and people telling me, we need you back in, that's why I'm doing this. Thank you.
Ms. Clark?
Certainly. So our business community are title companies, surveyors, lawyers, and real estate. And one of the reasons why we wanted to digitize all the records is that we wanted a central place for our lawyers, our surveyors, our title companies to be able to see the digital records. So we took the majority of the records, almost the vast majority of the 50% that were left, and we digitized them and put them in the online database. But the reality is that the online database, it's very old software, and so we are actually moving to update our records and recording system. Because one of the things that we've seen from Colorado and other states is that when we have a dedicated e-recording portal, then 90% of the throughput in the office becomes e-recording. A lot of constituents, if they have a one-off recording, they don't want to pay the $1,000 deposit. They want to just be able to upload their documents and record it online. And that's one of the things that we're trying to get done by the end of this fiscal year. The other thing is that we want to have improved search quality. So one of the things that we want to do is that when we have less of a need of the research department pulling microfiche and other physical documents, once we've finished digitizing all of the old documents, pre-1952 documents, is that we can create a quality control division. That's one of the reorganization plans. So they can go back through and find those lost documents that are not correctly labeled in the grantor-grantee or in the index, so that we can re-index them and ensure that they're accessible. So, and one of the things that lawyers have expressed to me is that because they no longer have to subscribe to the subscription, they can actually download documents, it's at 2 a.m. while researching a case, is something that they really appreciate, and they just pay one off with credit card, and because they've all downloaded in one transaction, it's easy to bill their clients. So we're actually hearing positive things from our title companies, our surveyors, our lawyers, who like the fact that you can go online, like the fact you can pay by credit card, and all the documents that have been digitized are accessible to everyone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Thank you.
Thank you. And this is a 1-minute question. What are you doing to make, or will you be doing, to make the office ADA accessible? And yes, you.
So we've actually worked very, very hard on ADA accessibility. We actually have won an Election Assistance Commission honorable mention because of our efforts for ADA compliance. One of the reasons why our drop boxes are drive up is because someone who is in a wheelchair who has to fish that wheelchair out of their car takes them 45 minutes to get out of the car. So it's not just arriving at a polling site and having all the polling site be ADA compliant. The actual trip itself can be very challenging. We worked on improving the process for visually visually impaired voters. We also, because it is a new building, it is ADA compliant, but one of the things that we've done is put everything online so folks don't have to make that trip to the office, particularly for those who are mobilely challenged. So we have made the office accessible in a variety of ways, not just for people who can come during business hours, and that's one of the ways we can increase ADA accessibility. We also work with New Mexico Disability Rights to survey every single one of our polling sites to ensure that we are meeting that Department of Justice requirement. Thank you.
Ms. Salazar?
That's correct. When the new building was built, that was something that was very important to the county in general, the county government, the Board of County Commissioners, that it be ADA compliance. So that's a given, that we have that benefit. When you look at the old building, that was not always the case. But once that new building was built, all of the elected officials and all the department heads said, this is a building that we need to do this. So we were up to par for that. In addition to that, ADA compliance at polling sites has always been an issue that we always had to address. But just like the old county building, we were faced with buildings that had that same type of situation. They were not 100% ADA. But I understand one of the staff at the county clerk's office, he and the state worked together to make sure that they could get the ADA compliance that the current clerk is talking about. So I think that we're in good shape. I think it's been an effort for many county clerks. Thank you.
And this question does not have a time, but I'm going to call it 1 minute. How are you able to post election results so early, and how accurate are they? Ms. Salazar?
Well, one of the things is that posting elections on election day has always been a challenge. But in 2022, I had never participated in my party's activities of being a watcher, a challenger, or observer, but I did decide to do that. And one of the things I remember going afterwards in the evening to the county clerk's office and talking to Catherine. She was bummed out because we were going to be there till 12 or 2 in the morning, remember that? And, but I said, you got the early votes in early. And that's something to be proud of, because it's difficult, and I feel for you. I know what the process is. So that's always been a challenge in Santa Fe County, and I do know that in 2022, Santa Fe County did get those results in for early voting, not the complete votes of the whole election. But I think what may have been beneficial is having those positions that I did create, which were the messengers that can go directly. If we hired them, they could go directly, get those cards, and bring them to the office. And the positions, I wanted to make sure that they were secure and they were honorable people that were going to do that job. Thank you.
Ms. Clark?
So one of the ways in which we know that people start believing that elections are rigged is that the longer they have to wait after the polls close. So one of the goals of my office has been to post early and absentee results as quickly as possible to help cut down on misinformation and that feeling that there's something they need to be suspicious of. It's not necessarily rational, but that is how voters feel. So one of the things that we've done is we make sure that we reconcile early and absentee. We start at the legislative time, because you can start absentee ballot tabulation when you have more than 10,000 voters 14 days early. So we make sure we have everything reconciled. We have a very smooth operation. So everything is ready to upload at basically 6:30. The chips themselves have a digital tracker on them, so you know that those ballots, those chips came directly from the tabulators. So you can, as soon as a presiding judge on election night comes into the office, you can upload it directly to the RTR, transfer it to the Secretary of State's computer, and upload that. So all results are verified. They just happen to be unofficial until we can go through the 4-step canvassing process that we have in our state. Thank you.
This is a 2-minute question. What is your opinion of a paperless election? Ms. Clark?
I think something that we are very proud of in New Mexico is that we can audit our elections. And the reality is that if you do not have a paper ballot, you cannot audit that election. I know there are a lot of advocates who want to go totally online, but then you can't audit that paper. One of the things we started this year is that there are 2 groups of people that can now vote using an online secure portal, and those are the people who are voting overseas using UOCAVA and also visually impaired. And the reason why that is they've already given up the right to privacy, so we can have a secure online portal, they can log in, and one of the nice things about that is that creates a chain of custody to know if they logged in and started a ballot, then we can follow up and say, did you mean to vote? Because when you are voting on the bottom of a submarine, you do not necessarily have an 11.5 by 22 inch piece of paper, so you're printing on all sorts of pieces of paper, taking pictures and sending it to us by email. And we weren't sure if we were getting the whole ballot, and it also was very challenging for UOCAVA voters. So we now have moved to online for a certain group of people, but we still want to have that paper ballot. One of the things that California does, which is really great, is you can pre-vote by an online portal, then you print a QR code, which essentially stores in the URL your vote choices. Then they can go to a polling site, use the QR code, everything is pre-filled as they voted at home, they verify their information, and then that ballot prints. So you still have a paper ballot, which you can increase how fast you are at a polling site. And that's one of the things we can make to streamline, but still maintain that all-important paper process so that we could audit votes. Thank you.
Ms. Salazar.
No, never. We need that paper ballot. And the former county clerk who's present here is Valerie Espinosa. In 2006, our laws changed to ensure that we had a paper ballot because it is auditable, and she was there in 2006. I came 2 years later, so that was a tremendous benefit to this state. In fact, during COVID and the craziness that was going on in 2020, I had meetings with the federal government, we could just visualize all the feds that were in a big table, and only a few clerks were talking to them over the phone, and we were sharing what a model we are in New Mexico when it comes to elections. We're not perfect, but we strive for perfection. Elections are not perfect, but they're fair because we work hard. If you take the work serious and work hard, we can tell you with the paper ballot, it's auditable. And then once we started with electronic voting machines, we had to be concerned too. More people were concerned about, well, what about it gets sidetracked because it's on the internet? No, we're not linear on the system. There's uploading, downloading, there's the ballot. There's multiple ways to ensure that your vote counts. In fact, we're even audited by an auditor at the Secretary of State's office. You have the also too the process of the county clerk staff and poll workers counting everything, and then it goes to the state, and you have that process. It's a continuum of a process of ensuring that your vote counts. And if you ever have a concern that it's not being counted, we can go back to the files. We can go back to the packets where we hand counted. I also experienced when I was an employee before being county clerk, where we had to get stacks of paper ballots and count every one that we ordered before anyone touched it, any voter. And then they were delivered to the polling sites, and then they had to tear them out and hand them. But with the paper ballot and then the ballot on demand process, we've improved throughout the years, so we are truly a model. And I'm looking forward to seeing what other models do we have to create.
Okay. This is a 2-minute question. What question do you wish we had asked? And answer it, please. Ms. Salazar.
What question do I... Is this fun?
No. Oh, no, definitely not.
To a point it is, especially if you're a person like me that has a public service in their heart and have experienced so much in my life and as clerk. It has been fun. It's stressful. I'm here, I'm committed, and I'm willing to be your county clerk again.
Thank you. Ms. Clark?
I wish that you had asked more about our future plans for the clerk's office. I think that we have reached a point in which we are just almost at the cusp of a lot of the things that we've been putting into place. So one of the things is that we have a new elections warehouse, but we just purchased it. So we need the time to be able to renovate it and use the money that the legislature gave us for that shared vision of improved voting, easier access, and more modernization in our government process. I want to finish that idea of moving our records and recording to a fully digital process and then having all of our records that are now currently under sprinkler put into an archival mode under foam so that we can protect those precious records. So there's a lot of things that I would like to do, including increasing the outreach capacity of our office so that we're going to as many events as we can, because that's the way we can increase turnout for Santa Fe County. I want to increase our youth outreach, our tribal outreach, our ADA compliance. You know, there's always more to do, and we're sort of 75% of the way there, but we want to continue. Thank you.
Thank you. And this is a 1-minute question. How do you think campaigns for public office should be funded? Ms. Clark?
I personally feel that if you're trying to run an election, you should not be trying to trying to campaign. I really believe that we should have a public financing aspect for people who are running, particularly for elections. It is such a wonderful thing that judges can get that seed money and then have publicly funded campaigns. The city has publicly funded campaigns, and there absolutely should be that people who are running for an elections office should be able to have a publicly financed campaign. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Salazar?
If we look at the model and the laws that govern judges and how they receive their funds, and also too, judges are held at the highest level of ethics when it comes to elections and how they receive money. There's a process. They're not supposed to know who donates to them. So if the laws are in place and we go towards where county clerks are provided with funds, to me, it doesn't matter. It makes me work harder, and then it makes me decide to, in this election, who do I want to donate to me? I'm very careful and cautious, but I have to look at what do the people want for us? What laws should we have that govern that? Because there needs to be checks and balances. So whether it's public funding, which I'm liberal, but when it comes to finances, that's where I'm conservative. So it would all be about what is the cost for the taxpayers? Is it something we want as a people? Let us decide together.
Thank you. And I believe this is going to be our last question. It's 2 minutes. What are you doing to engage youth, or will you be doing to engage youth, get them excited to vote, and to educate them about the importance of their vote? Ms. Salazar.
We'll continue to do what the clerk's office did in the past. Several clerks before me, is that you go out to schools and you have your staff take a voting machine and you show them how to run an election, you show them how to cast a ballot. So that needs to continue. And the beauty is that we also have an outreach coordinator who that's their sole responsibility. Well, not really sole, but that is the real focus. I think that's what's important. And that way, other staff, unless they need assistance, the outreach coordinator, to encourage youth to vote, it takes away a lot when you pull a lot of the staff that need to be in the office. So that position is a true benefit, and I think we need to, and I think that's happening now. It's happened, but it's better because of the outreach coordinator who's dedicated to that responsibility.
Thank you. Ms. Clark?
Thank you. So we hired the first outreach coordinator in our office, and he's been working very hard on a Democracy 101 program, and it is actually a strategic youth outreach plan. The first was a sticker contest where we engaged all of the high schools and middle schools and lower schools to submit sticker designs, and then we had engagement with the county employees choosing with ranked choice voting anonymously what the winning sticker was, and then we used that to engage voters on this award-winning sticker contest. So we won an Election Assistance Commission award for that. This program, Democracy 101, is part of a larger team turnout program where we're doing trainings for our candidates, we're doing trainings for different youth organizations, we're doing trainings for whoever will listen about misinformation and making sure we get out the vote and how we use data to get out the vote so that people are not spreading misinformation without knowing it. One of the things that we've been working on is working very hard with New Mexico Youth in Government program. We actually run their elections for them at the legislature. We actually go into all the high schools. We have a student poll worker program. We have an intern program. one of the things that we're seeing is that people are not going into civil service anymore, and I would like to have an internship program where we hire kids who are 13, 14 after school, and then they can graduate to a more in-depth internship so that they will have the capacity to become people who work in our office, because many people come straight out of high school to go into civil service. And one of the things I want to do is create capacity in all aspects of county government where we have an internship program, reaching out to our youth and making sure that they're engaged, not only learning about civics, but actually becoming maybe perhaps a public servant. So these are the ways in which I plan to increase the capacity of our office, but also ensure that people who are young know that their vote will count no matter what, and that they are excited to become voters in Santa Fe County. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move to the candidates' 1-minute closing statements in reverse order from their opening statements. And again, I'm going to ask you to hold your applause until we reach the absolute end of the forum tonight. So, Ms. Clark.
Thank you. I ran on the idea that when I had seen other, not necessarily in New Mexico, but other places where the clerk had, really believed in the mission, but not necessarily done the implementation correctly, we saw that some candidates might have lost because there was not enough capacity at the polling sites, there was not enough ballots, and that's something that I always wanted to run for, because I saw there was an opportunity to increase capacity to make things better. I'm very interested in making sure that we modernize the office, because when we modernize the office, we actually increase capacity and accessibility, right? Not everyone can access the office in the same way, so when we have increased accessibility, we're actually increasing it for an office for everyone. So the thing I care most about, though, is making sure that every vote counts. It's one of the reasons why we've worked so hard on outreach, on turnout, on education, on youth programs, on ADA compliance, because elections after 2020, in the era that we're in, we need to do everything we can to protect the right to vote, because all over the country we're seeing that right being taken away. So if you want to protect elections in New Mexico and you want to ensure that the clerk's office continues to be the best in the state in terms of voter turnout, because we are rated #1 from MIT on election administration, then I hope I can count on your vote. Thank you.
Ms. Salazar.
Let me stay focused. The challenges facing the clerk's office today are the following: election security, voter confidence, staff morale, customer service, and ensuring the new election warehouse is appropriately renovated, secure, and operational. In addition, staff training, purchasing New Mexico-approved election equipment, and adhering to all legal mandates of the entire office are also today's challenges, which I am highly qualified to manage with staff. I will conduct a full assessment of all office operations, customer service protocols, and meet with staff to listen to their perspectives on successes, needs, and training requirements. For election security, I will work with federal security experts, Secretary of State's office, election equipment vendors, county IT staff, and other county departments. I will adhere to all federal and state election legal requirements to ensure that there are free, fair, and secure elections. Before leaving office in 2020, I updated and created job descriptions, as I mentioned before, and positions to improve office operations, security, and voter confidence. If re-elected, I will evaluate all current job positions to determine effectiveness and implement improvements where necessary. Please vote for Geraldine Salazar re-election. Thank you so much this evening, and thank you to the League of Women Voters, to the listeners tonight. I look forward to working with you again. Thank you.
That concludes this evening's County Clerk Candidates Forum. And I'd like to thank Phil Cazaus, the editor, and Patrick Dorsey, the publisher of the Santa Fe New Mexican, Henry Lopez of Lopez Integrated Technologies, and Matt Dalside for broadcasting the forum. It will be available for future streaming on the New Mexican's website, santafenewmexican.com, and on our website, lwvsfc.org. For more information on election and the candidates, read the League's voter guide. It's available at lwvsfc.org and vote411.org. We want to remind you that if your question was not asked, you are welcome to stay after the forum to talk to the candidates. For those of you who are watching online, if you have questions for the candidates, go to vote411.org for the candidates' contact information. A candidate forum for county commissioners, districts 2 and 4 will take place on Tuesday, April 30th. And for more information, visit our website. Be sure to make your voice heard in this election by voting, early or absentee or at the polls on June 4th. Please join me in thanking the candidates for their participation. And good night.